Before I start the time-lapse and tutorial video, I just wanted to go through some of the materials I used. I used a kneaded eraser. I used Staedler-Mars Lumograph graphite pencils range from 4H to 6B. I used Faber Castell's pencil. I just used the 8B one. See that there. And I used Faber Castell's precision or perfection eraser. I like this because you can sharpen it to a fine point. I use that to get the texture in his beards. I also used the Tombow-mono eraser, and I like this one because you can click it up and then you can kind of use the edges to really, make fast flicks. And then I used various sizes of blending stumps. I have this one and this one, and just a range of big and small ones. And then lastly, what I used was this brush, and I used it to move the graphite around while I was doing the texture in his face and in his beard, because I didn't want any harsh lines. I just wanted the the texture to be toned down and to blend it so it looked more like it was his skin, not just like something sitting on top of his skin. So that's all I really wanted to tell you. Let's go ahead and get into the video. In this drawing, I'm going to be going over how I did David Bowie in graphite. When I do a drawing, I usually start on the eye first because it's the most important part to me, and usually the first thing that you draw gets revisited the most. When I recorded this, I forgot to hit the record button on my camera, so the first part of this eye I did not record, but it's all good. I'll go over my whole process when I start on the second eye. Here I'm filling in the pupil, and I'm filling in the different shades of gray within the iris. At this point of the drawing, it shouldn't really look like an eye. You should just be more focused on getting the different shades of gray in. You don't really want to worry like, I need to make this look like an eye, because it won't look like an eye. It's not going to look like an eye while you're trying to go through the different processes of drawing. So if you look at it more like an abstract piece where I need to get this color here and this color here and make this match my reference photo, I find that you'll have a much more pleasant time drawing, and the end result will be better. Also, when drawing the eye, you want to make sure that you don't leave the whites of the eye completely white, because I know when I first started drawing, I would look at it and I'd be like, well, the white of the eye is white, so just leave it white, right? No, it's actually got different levels of gray in it. It's just really light gray. So I think that's the biggest mistake a lot of people make when they first start drawing, is they don't put in the different shadows and stuff in the eye. And when you put in those different shadows in the eye, it actually really makes the eye recede behind the eyelids, which gives it the realistic look of an eye. And here I'm starting on the nose, and for the nose, you really want to focus on where you need to put the shadows and where you need to put the lights and everything, because it shows where the different contours and everything are on the face and in the nose. And especially like where the nose fold is, that area tends to be really dark because it's it's usually hidden from the light, so it's in a lot of shadow. And the bridge of your nose, sticks out from your face, so it's usually in a lot of light. So you want to make sure that you're aware of that when doing the nose. And here I'm starting on the hair. Ooh, I always just kind of cringe a little inside when starting on the hair. I'm not very good at hair, but I mean, drawing, it's all about learning and trying to figure out a process that works for you and trying to figure out how to make things look more realistic. And this just happens to be one of the areas that I have the hardest time with. So I have a few tricks and things that'll help you that I wish I knew while doing it. When doing hair, you want to make sure that you're not trying to draw each individual strand, because when you do that, you end up making the hair look very straw-like, and it ends up looking very straw-like and very stiff, which isn't very realistic looking. When doing hair, you want to look at it more as like big sections, like clumps of hair, and you want to focus more on those clumps and put in, okay, where should the dark parts be, where should where are my lightest strands of hair. And when you do that, you will find that it's a lot less frustrating, and in the end you'll get a better result. Also, I wanted to point out, when I was working on my darkest areas, in the hair and overall in this piece, you want to make sure that you use an HB or lower pencil down first before you put in your darker pencils like 2B and up, because 2B and up, they're a very soft lead. So when you put them down onto the paper, it'll give you kind of that grainy look, and you don't really want that. So by using the HB pencil, the HB pencil, which is a harder lead, it'll really get into the tiny tooths of the paper, and it'll get rid of that grainy look. And here, I'm still working on the hair. Like I said, working clumps, and I'm really getting into where those dark areas are, and I'm kind of leaving where the lighter hairs are white for now. Later on, I will go in and shade those lighter bits of hair, but for now I'm just kind of leaving them blank. Now that I'm like looking at it, I'm thinking like maybe I should have like filled in the whole area and maybe used an eraser and pulled those areas out. That might have been better, but what are you gonna do? It's all a learning process when doing art. And I got tired of doing hair, so I gave up for a while, and I started going back to the face. So here, I'm putting where my shadows should be, and starting to work on the forehead. When doing an area where you have lines or wrinkles, make sure you fill in those lines or wrinkles pretty dark. Otherwise, you will end up losing those lines or wrinkles as you're smudging your graphite down to make the skin look smooth. So just be aware of that. Just be aware of your initial drawing, and make sure that you don't lose any of the stuff that you've spent such a long time to get down by accidentally blending it out with your blending stump or what have you. Also, when working in graphite, make sure you use a really light hand, because if you press too hard with your graphite pencil, you will actually end up getting rid of the paper's texture. And if you get rid of the paper's texture too soon, you will not be able to add as many layers as you want. It'll give you more of that like shiny look that you'll get with graphite if you press too hard with the pencils. And here you can see that I filled in the top lip, and I like to kind of skip around a little bit while I do art, That way I can use, the different areas as a reference to where I should put some, like a shadow or, a line or, what have you in another place. Like for example, I filled in the lip, and then I could tell, okay, so about, half an inch above, there should be like that, the smile line. And then the contour of his cheek should touch the smile line and kind of recede back to his ear. So by, skipping around and filling in this area and filling in that area, you can use the different areas that you kind of work on as references for the other parts of your drawing. And here I'm going in and I'm gonna start putting texture into his forehead, and I did that by using a kneaded eraser, and then I kind of pushed it around with my brush. And for when you do lips, the top lip tends to be darker than the bottom lip, and this happens because the top lip kind of turns inward, so it doesn't get a lot of light, so it's kind of more in that shadow, and the bottom lip kind of protrudes out more, so it kind of gets a little bit of light hitting it on the bottom versus the top lip. And when you're doing the lips, when you put in the lines of the lip, you want to make sure you do that really softly. And after you actually put the lines in the lip, I kind of go back and I smudge it and kind of blend it out. That way they don't look so harsh. Because if you use too heavy of a hand, or if you use too dark of a pencil for the lines in the lip, you'll actually end up making the cracks in lips look fake and unnatural. And here you can see I was going back over the eyes and the eyebrow area. Like I said, I like to do the eyes first because they're areas that I like to revisit. And here I'm starting the ear, and we all know how fun doing an ear can be with all of its funny folds and contours and like the weird, hole and all that stuff. So when working on the ear, you want to make sure you take your time, make sure you follow your reference photo, and don't add any shading or shadows where it shouldn't be, because I know when I first started drawing, I kind of went to town on when I was doing the ears, and I after I was done, I would look at it and I'm like, I just gave this person elephant ears somehow. So just make sure you take your time, put the shadows where they need to be, and don't go overboard. And here I'm starting to work on the neck area and his chest, and it's just the same process. Just have a very light hand, and don't worry so much about blending it at this point. Just make sure you get the colors down. And here I'm starting on his mustache area, and to get that really scruffy kind of 5 o'clock shadow mustache, what I did was I followed my reference photo and I put where all of his hairs were, I put them down, and then I went over with my pencil and I kind of went over it, and then I took my blending stump and shaded over it, and then I took my eraser and I kind of picked out where I saw highlights, and then I would take the brush and I would go over with the brush and kind of push down that loose graphite into the paper, and I just did that over and over and over again until I got something that I was pleased with. And if you notice, the cheek is really dark, and it actually is darker than it should be, but because I knew I was gonna take the eraser and kind of give him that skin texture, I made sure to go a little bit darker than his cheek is in the reference photo, because I knew I would lighten it later. So just be aware of that while drawing. It of course comes with practice and trial and error, but don't be afraid to test things out, and if they don't work, it's not the end of the world. Usually you can usually just erase things and, you know, try again. But again, with his cheek, I did the same thing. I just, you know, I shaded that area, then I followed where I saw his hair was going, and make sure you really follow that reference photo and you put the hairs in the same direction that they're going in the reference photo. Otherwise it'll just look weird and off. And I took my Tombow-mono eraser and just flicked it up, and I would just pick out highlights that I saw, and then I would take the brush and go over and smooth it all in, and I really like that effect. It's really tedious, but the final effect is really nice. And then for his necklace, I just went over with an HB pencil and drew the like half circle, and then where it's kind of hiding behind his neck, I made sure to make that area darker, and then I took my eraser and pulled out some of the highlights that I saw. And here I'm shading underneath his jawline, and this is the final picture, at least for now. Please stay tuned, and I'll show you how I do the background, and that should be really fun. Okay, until next time, guys.